Now we do not want you to be uninformed, believers, about those who are asleep in death, so you will not grieve for them as the others do, who have no hope beyond this present life. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, as in fact he did, even so God in the same way, by raising them from the dead, will bring with him those believers who have fallen asleep in Jesus. For we say this to you by the Lord's own words, that we who are still alive and will remain until the coming of the Lord will in no way precede into his presence those believers who have fallen asleep in death. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a shout of command, with the voice of the archangel and the blast of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain on earth will simultaneously be caught up, raptured together with them, the resurrected ones in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Come on. And so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort and encourage one another with these words concerning our reunion with believers who have died. Today we're going to talk about grief and how to process it. So my dad was a Trekkie. I remember watching one episode with him one time, and one of the crew members had passed away, and all of them were celebrating. They were having a party, smiling, and having a good old time. Normally when someone dies, you're supposed to grieve and feel sad and cry and all this other stuff. We're black. My dad had to break it down to me. He said when one of them died, it was a celebration because they got to go back home to where they came from. They didn't have to endure the suffering and the pain that life brought to them anymore. And whenever a baby was born, they grieved because that baby had to start a journey of suffering and pain. When you know your identity in Christ, it takes away the sting of death. The Lord does not want us to grieve for those that die in him. You should be grieving for those that don't know him, because they really don't know where they're going when they leave this earth, which is why they store all their treasures here and not in the heavenly places. That's why it's so important to introduce the Lord to as many non-believers as possible. Leave the 99 and go seek the lost sheep. The word also says, "Come to me all who are weary and heavy burdened with religious rituals that provide no peace, and I will give you rest. Refresh your soul with salvation." The goats, or the ones that straddle the fence, typically have no reserves for themselves. They're so extroverted and they want to spread themselves around to every single body and never have time to go to their secret place to spend time with the Lord one-on-one. And because of that lack of relationship one-on-one, they have a tendency to fall for things like the prosperity gospel to keep them afloat, or they think that that is where God is at. The moment that the scales are falling from their eyes, a lot of people that are extroverted get kind of scared and intimidated to go to that secret place because they've never had a moment in life where it was ever that quiet. And most of the time they run from it. And that's due to the conditioning of this earth. The word says that there's no rest for the wicked. So as long as there's something to do for those extroverts, they're going to do it. Death is only a transition. When my father died, I heard in the spirit, "Let the dead bury the dead." And as harsh as that sounds, that was God's way of saying, don't you go dying with him. I still got work for you to do here on this earth. If we could start to see death as a transition period, grief would be a lot easier to process for the believers. And if we can reach them unbelievers, we would help remove the sting or the fear of death from them. After all, Jesus is the way, the truth, the life to salvation. He's the only God that provides that. Be blessed.